Cancer is Your Body Healing by Gemma O'Doherty. Okay, let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we're going to map out 4 key areas from the text. First up, redefining biology and illness. Second, a new theory of cancer. Third, critiquing the medical establishment. And fourth, proposed alternatives and healing. All right, section 1, redefining biology and illness. To truly get what this article is saying, you first have to grasp just how massively it rejects conventional science. I mean, we're not just talking about a casual disagreement over treatment plans here. The text fundamentally tears up the very basic biological principles that, well, most of the modern world operates on. For those who've really done a deep dive into this material, the text outright asserts that there is simply no such thing as a virus. No viruses at all. And the immune system, at least as we're usually taught to understand it simply doesn't exist in this framework. Contagion is framed entirely as a myth. Under this paradigm, you literally cannot catch a cold, a flu, or any other condition from another person. The whole germ theory of disease? Totally discarded. It shifts the focus entirely away from any kind of external microscopic threats. So, if germs aren't the issue, what's going on? Well, the foundational premise here is that our bodies are essentially perfect healing machines. The text portrays the human body as incredibly resilient, operating in this state of constant, almost miraculous regeneration. I mean, think about it. Every few weeks, we're generating entirely new skin, a completely new liver. The body is just endlessly working to maintain harmony and health. And honestly, it tolerates an incredible amount of bad behavior from us. But this natural, perfect renewal is routinely hindered by our lifestyle choices. The author specifically targets things like alcohol consumption, which the text pointedly refers to as the demon drink over in Ireland, along with diets packed full of sugar and junk food. These toxic habits basically overload the body's natural systems, forcing it to work overtime just to manage the daily influx of poisons. Because the body is viewed as this flawless healing machine, the author completely redefines the whole concept of feeling sick. When you get aches, pains, a heavy cough, maybe a burning fever, the text argues these are absolutely not signs of some malicious infection attacking you. Not at all. Actually, they're incredibly positive, active bodily functions. They are the body's critical, necessary efforts to heal, purify, and aggressively cleanse itself of all those accumulated toxins. A fever, that's just the body burning off waste. A cough, that's the body actively expelling it. So, following this logic, running to a doctor or a pharmacy to grab medicines that just mask those symptoms is seen as highly dangerous. The argument is that suppressing a cough or artificially lowering a fever actually interrupts your body's vital detox process, which just traps those toxins inside, and ultimately makes you way sicker in the long run. Moving on to section 2, a new theory of cancer. Now, having fundamentally redefined what basic illness is, the text applies that exact same logic directly to oncology. In this specific framework, a tumor is absolutely not a malicious random mutation that's trying to kill you. Instead, it's described as a highly sophisticated protective sac. Think of it like this. When the body realizes it's completely overloaded with dangerous toxins and really needs to pull off a massive emergency detox, it gathers all those poisons together and walls them off. It basically builds a containment unit. The text literally compares this biological process to stuffing hazardous garbage into thick black sacks before hauling it off to the dump. So the tumor's entire purpose here is to quarantine poisons, right? Just keeping them safely out of your bloodstream and away from your vital organs until the body can figure out how to safely excrete them. Understanding that whole garbage sack analogy is key because it reveals exactly why the text views conventional cancer treatments as utterly catastrophic. Think about it from the author's perspective. The body has just done all this incredibly hard work to gather, isolate, and contain lethal toxins inside that protective tumor. But then, modern medicine's first course of action, surgery, involves aggressively cutting right into that very containment unit. By slicing open the tumor, all those trapped toxins are immediately released right back into a vulnerable body, completely undoing the body's life-saving work. On top of that, chemotherapy is described in the text as this insidious drip that pumps highly toxic chemicals into a system that is already desperately overloaded and just crying out for purification. So these standard treatments are framed as an active, devastating sabotage of the body's natural healing protocol. And that brings us to this powerful quote. Cancer is your body healing. Tumors are the therapy. That really perfectly summarizes the author's central thesis. It takes a pretty profound paradigm shift to grasp, but in the reality presented by this text, the disease is literally the cure. The complex biological phenomenon that the medical world terrifyingly labels cancer is framed here as the ultimate heroic defense mechanism of a body trying to save its own life. The tumor isn't the problem. The toxicity that made the tumor necessary is the problem. The tumor itself is just the body's brilliant therapeutic solution. Which brings us to section 3, critiquing the medical establishment. With this alternative biological framework fully mapped out, the author sharply turns to history. The argument here is that the medical profession was fundamentally corrupted over a century ago. The text traces all of this back to the 1910 Flexno Report in America. According to the source, this pivotal report was heavily funded by powerful industrialists like Rockefeller and Carnegie, who, by the way, are labeled in the text as depopulationists. The claim is that this report systematically eradicated traditional, holistic, and natural healing methods from medical education entirely. In their place, a rigid biomedical model was installed, one completely reliant on profitable, artificial drugs, vaccines, radiation, and surgical intervention. Fast forward to the 21st century, and the argument is that the pharmaceutical industry has achieved total capture. They've essentially bought off governments, hospitals, doctors, and the media to protect what the text calls a highly lucrative symptom-masking empire. This historical corporate capture is said to have profound psychological effects on the modern public. The text describes everyday people as being deeply addicted to this sprawling cancer industry. Patients are framed as being trapped in a genuine trauma bond with their doctors, basically handing over all their bodily autonomy to authority figures in white coats out of sheer panic. In fact, the author identifies hypochondria, the act of making yourself physically ill with paralyzing worry over standard blood tests and scans, as the real pandemic plaguing our society today. The entire diagnostic apparatus of modern medicine is dismissed as an elaborate network of phony medical testing schemes. These schemes, the argument goes, are carefully orchestrated by a medical industrial complex that's designed to keep perfectly healthy people perpetually terrified, chronically stressed, and utterly reliant on expensive, lifelong interventions. To ground this massive systemic critique in some harsh reality, the text recounts a deeply tragic anecdote about a man in his 80s. Now, this was a guy who lived an incredibly healthy, vibrant life. He felt perfectly fine, full of energy, but he made what the author considers the mistake of submitting to routine medical tests. Suddenly, out of nowhere, he was told his body was riddled with cancer. Despite feeling completely healthy, he felt entirely powerless to say no to the intense pressure from his doctor. He reluctantly accepted the prescribed chemotherapy and radium treatments, and the text notes that almost immediately his health rapidly and violently declined, leaving him feeling that the treatment itself was actively killing him. For the author, this story serves as a stark illustration of how vulnerable, otherwise healthy people are routinely bullied and pressured in clinics every single day, to their own immense detriment. So, with this complete rejection of standard biology and the entire medical establishment mapped out, a crucial question naturally emerges. If modern medicine is actively harmful, what exactly does the author propose we do instead? That takes us to our final part, Section 4, Proposed Alternatives and Healing. To dismantle any lingering trust in standard scientific paradigms, the text relies on specific, sweeping assertions from supporting figures, most notably a Dr. Tom Cowan. The claims presented here are absolute. Cancer is unequivocally not a genetic disease. The entire industry of cancer screening, it's labeled a dangerous scam. But it goes even further than that. The whole field of genetics itself is cast aside as complete pseudoscience. The text frames genetics as a false roadmap that just distracts us from the true causes of illness. Finally, it's stated that there is no such thing as an autoimmune disease. The argument is that the body simply does not attack itself, ever. The body only attacks the toxins trapped within it. Following all of this, the resulting healing protocol is actually remarkably straightforward. It focuses entirely on enabling the body to just do its own work. Step 1 centers on food, or rather, the lack thereof. While food is your medicine is definitely a core tenet, fasting is heavily emphasized as the ultimate tool. It gives the digestive system a break, allowing the body to redirect all that massive energy toward expediting toxin expulsion. Step 2 involves deeply reconnecting with nature. We're talking about getting abundant sunshine and rigorously eliminating alcohol, processed sugar, and toxic junk foods from your daily life. But step 3 is presented as the most critical of all: total abstinence from medical interventions. The core argument is that the body will only successfully heal itself if you provide it with the right natural conditions and strictly stay away from synthetic pharmaceutical chemicals that interrupt the detox process. This brings us to one of the most uncompromising, striking concepts in the entire text: victim consciousness. The bold assertion here is that the only real disease that truly exists is this specific mindset. Victim consciousness is defined as the deeply ingrained attitude that a disease is somehow not your fault, that you're just the unlucky recipient of bad genetics or maybe a random environmental strike. The text takes an incredibly harsh and definitive stance against this. It demands that individuals must stop playing the victim. In this view, there is no bad luck. There are only your lifestyle choices and your toxic exposures. Taking absolute, unwavering personal responsibility for every single aspect of her health is framed as the mandatory first step to real healing. First rule of thumb: stay away from doctors. Your life could depend on it. By framing the human body as a flawless healing machine and the entire medical establishment as a profit-driven empire that inherently sabotages that healing, this explicit warning really becomes the only logical conclusion for the author. It's a dramatic, sweeping summary of the argument that conventional medicine is the true danger here. And honestly, it leaves us with a pretty heavy final thought to ponder. If we view the modern medical establishment not as a savior, but as the primary threat to our health, it really forces us to ask, are we truly ready to take absolute, solitary responsibility for our own survival? Thank you for listening to another session of the NotebookLM.News series. You can find the full archive of all my podcasts at notebooklm.news.